How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're starting Daf Mem Gimel, Daf 43 of Masechta BavaMetzia. Friends. Your friends. Where we start? Ooh. Ah. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Ah. Ooh. Wow. Ah. Oof. Oof. Ooh. Ah. Ooh. 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 Yeah. Okay. Oof. Yeah. Oof. Today's daf. Oof. I have to remember it. Yeah, I reviewed it yesterday, but I think I was intimidated at how much energy it was going to take to record that I pushed it off to today. But now the time has come. Okay. Well. All right. There we go. Okay. It's going to be great. We're gonna learn 2 Mishnayos today. 3 Mishnayos? Hopefully 3 Mishnayos today. What I would like to do is I would like to finish Perek HaMafkid so we can get a fresh start tomorrow with Perek HaZov, which is going to be awesome. That's what I would like to do. It's going to be a lot, I think. It's a lot of dense stuff. But here we go. We're just going to go for it. We're going to enjoy ourselves as we do so. Okay. We're going to start in Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph all the way at the top at the first of our 3 Mishnayos. Okay, here we go. Hopefully 3 Mishnayos. I think I'd like to do 3 Mishnayos. Okay, what time is it? Wait, what? No. Yes? No. What? What time is it? Oh, not that late, but it's pretty late. Alright, let's do it. Says the Mishnah, Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph. Hamafkid ma'oz etzel shul chani. Okay. A person deposits money with a money changer, which is kind of a funny person to deposit money with, because money changers, there's money coming in, coming out, there's money moving all over the place. Like if you want to kind of put your money in a chilled out kind of place where you can just come back at a later point and pick them up without having to be concerned about, too much activity. Money changer is probably the last place I would think to leave my money. But amafkid mos etzel shulchani. So a person deposits money with a shulchani, with a money changer. Im tzrurin. Okay, so if the money is bundled up, I don't know. I wonder if I imagine let's say it was in an envelope or something. So you take the money, you put it in an envelope, and you give it to the money changer. And you say, hey, can you watch it for me? So lo yishtamish boid. So the money changer should not touch them. Should leave them. Put them on the side. Don't use that money. And therefore, because he's unable to get any benefit from this money, he just has to watch it. He can't do anything with it. So he's considered like a shomer chinam. It's considered like a shomer chinam. And a shomer chinam is potter for gneva v'aveda. Lefi chachim avdu. Therefore, if they get lost, enu chay b'achrayusa. He's potter because shomer chinam is potter for gneva v'aveda. Mutarin. But if the money was not in an envelope, it was just here's a few $100, and he pulls out a few individual bills, and he gives them to him. So then, mutar, he's allowed to, it's a money-changing enterprise, and there's money coming in, coming out, moving around, and he's allowed to use them. And therefore, because he's getting benefit, obviously he'd have to return them ultimately, but because he's getting benefit from them, what does Rashi say is considered like a shomer sacher? 1 second. Where am I? Wait, where am I? I think... so what is it? Yishtamish b'en lefichachim avdu chayiv b'achrayus. And therefore, if they get lost, then he's going to be chayiv. B'achrayus is going to be chayiv be'achrayus. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Where am I? There's so many details here. Yishtamish by lefichachim avdu enechai b'chizum mutar and yishtamish by, and he can use them. So therefore, he's not considered like a shomer chinam. Okay, and therefore, since he's not considered like a shomer chinam, so memeli is chai for gnev v'aveda. So lefichachim avdu chai b'achrayusan, he's going to be chayiv if they get lost. if he's allowed to use them. Eitzo balabais, if he, so now, if he leaves money by a, sort of in the opposite extreme, just like by a regular person, says, hey, here's some money, can you just hold on to it for me? And it's not like a money-changing business with his money coming in and coming out and moving around. So bein tzurin, bein mutarin, whether they were bundled, whether they were, not, whether they were just kind of free, lo yishtamish bain, you should not touch them, right? Meaning the Baal Habayis should just put them somewhere and leave them, regardless of if they were like in an envelope or just not, it makes no difference. He should not touch them, and because he shouldn't touch them, he's be'etzem mishom mechinam. So lefichach im avdu, if they get lost, enu chaim b'achrayusan, he's potter because it's a shom mechinam. Chenvoni k'Baal Habayis divrei Meir says that a storekeeper, a clerk, is like a store, is like a homeowner, okay, and he has the halachos of the homeowner. V'shom mechinam. Rabbi Yehuda Omer chenvoni k'shulchani, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says that a store owner is like a money changer, and there would be those halachos depending on if the money is bundled or not. Okay, it says the Gemara. Frag the Gemara. Mishum detzurin lo yishtamish boin. So, one second. Just because they are like in an envelope, the money changer shouldn't use them, right? Meaning, the fact of the matter is that, meaning when they're not bundled in any way. Okay, how about this? When it comes to the homeowner, we said whether they're bundled, whether they're not bundled, the homeowner should not touch them, and therefore he's a shomer chinam, and if anything happens, he's potter. It's an entirely different ball game when it comes to a money changer. How come? Because a money changer, there's money. It's inherently a kind of place where money is moving around, and therefore and therefore he's allowed to use them. Why should it matter whether the money is in an envelope or not? It doesn't change the nature of where this money is being deposited. It's being deposited with a money changer. Right? So Rashi says on the last of the wide lines, the fourth line of Rashi, the last of the wide ones, somebody who's depositing money with a money changer, you know that you're lending money, that you're depositing money with a money changer who's always in need of cash to be able to exchange. So therefore, so then, even if they're bundled, that doesn't make a difference because it's normal to bundle your money, right? If you're giving money, it's normal to put them in an envelope. That's what I was thinking, envelope. What's the kind of the normal way to bundle a rubber band, an envelope or something, right? So meaning, the fact of the matter is, a person who's depositing money with a money changer knows that he's depositing it with somebody who's always in need of money. There's always money moving around. There's always, finding any money available to be able to exchange. The normal way to give money to somebody is in an envelope. The fact that the money's in an envelope shouldn't make a meaningful difference in terms of the relationship with the money changer when you're giving money to a money changer and depositing it with him. So therefore, just because they're bundled together when you give it to the money changer, that makes a meaningful difference, and he can't use them, and therefore he's going to be potter because it's a shomer chinam. So Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yehuda Betzurin Vachsumin. They weren't just bundled, but they were sealed. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe you put it in an envelope and then you sealed the envelope, and it was hey, just hold on for them. Don't use these. They're in a sealed envelope. He would have to open the envelope in order to use the money. So in that case, he should not. The money changer in that case should not use it, and that is why he would be considered a shomer chinam. We'd be potter for Gniv Vaveda in that. No, yeah, exactly. You'd be potter for Gniv Vaveda in that case. Okay. Where am I? So B'tzurin v'achsumin shanu. Rav Mari Amar says, Rav Mari bekesher mishuna is a weird kind of a knot. Okay, you tied the money in a weird kind of a knot. That's why you shouldn't touch it. Ikadam, those say, boy, Rav Mari. Rav Mari Taka asked, kesher mishuna mai, what's the halacha if it was a weird kind of a knot? Okay, we said that if the money is not bundled together, so they're kind of free flowing, So then he is able to use them, and therefore since he's able to use them, so he's going to be chayav b'achrayus, and he won't be considered like a shomer chinam. Be chayav for gneva v'aveda. Omer Rav Huna v'afilu ne'ensu. Wow. So it says Rav Huna, even if it wasn't avdu, even if it wasn't lost, they didn't get lost, it wasn't gneva v'aveda, it was ones, still the money changer is going to be chayiv. Look at Rashi, and the second of the thin lines of Rashi. V'afilu ne'ensu, even if they, even something ones kind of happens, even if he didn't use them, because since he's able to use them and he's able to get that benefit of, if he needs the money, he can use it, so he's going to be considered like a borrower, and a borrower is chayav for onus. Okay, so again, Amar Rav Huna says, v'afilu nensu, even in a situation of onus, v'avdu katani, but the Mishnah specifically says if they got lost, not right, K'nei v'aveda, not onus. So Kidrabba, it's like Rabba, the Amar Rabba, nignevu belistin mezuyun, avdu shetavus finasu bayam. That, well, Gneva v'aveda could be Gneva belistin mezuyun, which is onus, or, meaning armed bandits, or it could be that is a ship sunk at sea, which is, getting lost, but also a type of onus. So Gneva v'aveda could also be onsin. So Rav Huna says that once the money changer receives these these funds, once the money is deposited with the money changer and it's not bundled and he's allowed to use it, so he's considered like a borrower, and if anything happens at all to them, he's going to be chayav according to Rav Huna. Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman ne'ensu lo, whereas Rav Nachman says that if it's ones, that if there's ones that happens to it, something crazy, they get stolen balista mezuyun chvais nicht. So Rav Nachman says he would be potter. The Rav Nachman, so Rav says to Rav Nachman, b'ledidach de amart ne'ensu lo. So Rav Nachman, if you say that he's potter for ones, well then amalo avishoel alayu. Okay, so then clearly he's not going to be considered a shoel, a borrower, right? Meaning Rav Huna says that he's chayiv, that the money changer is chayiv even for ones, because since he gets his money and he's able to use them if he needs them and to exchange them for other people, so therefore he's considered a borrower, and so Rav Huna says he's chayiv even for ones. Now Rav Nachman says he's potter for ones. So Rav says to Rav Nachman, well, Rav Nachman, if you say he's potter for ones, so then he's clearly not a shoel. And if he's not a shoyel, if he's not a borrower, well then he's nothing. If he's not a borrower, he's not getting any benefit. If we're not treating him like a borrower, so then the point is that this potential benefit that he has to be able to use it is not considered significant. It doesn't make him a shoel, and if it's not considered significant, then he shouldn't be considered like a shomer sacher either. So now the thing is that Rav Nachman is saying that, so Rav Nachman disagrees with Rav Huna. Rav Huna says that the money changer would be chayiv for ones like a shoel. And then Rav Huna has to explain the Mishnah when it says avdu, that they got lost. It means like shetavas finasu bayam, like it was an ones kind of avdu. So then Rav Nachman takes it literally. He says no. When the Mishnah says ones, when the Mishnah says avdu, it means gneva v'aveda. That he's chayiv for gneva v'aveda, i.e. he's considered like a shomer sacher. Rav then asked Rav Nachman, wait a second. If you're saying that he's potter for ones, so clearly you're disagreeing with Rav Huna and you're holding that he's not a shoyel, because the potential that he has to be able to use this money is not considered enough to make him like a borrower, this potential usage of the money. And therefore, if he's not considered a shoyel, so Rava argues, then he shouldn't be considered, if this benefit is nothing, it shouldn't be anything at all. And then, just like he's not chayiv for ones, he shouldn't be chayiv for gneva v'aveda either, because he's not getting any benefit whatsoever. Right? If he's getting this benefit, it should be like he's borrowing it, right? He can use it, and then he just has to give it back, just like as if he's borrowing it. But if you're saying that he's not a borrower, then he shouldn't be a shomer sacher either. So then why should he be chayiv for anything? Because according to Rav Nachman, he's saying he's potter for ones, but he's chayiv for gneva v'aveda. But if we're saying that this potential to be able to use the money is not significant unless he actually uses it, which he hasn't yet, so then he should be completely off the hook. So Amar Le, so Rav Nachman responds, Beha modina lach. No. Look, I disagree when it comes with Rav Huna when it comes to Shoel. And I say he's not considered a Shoel, he's not considered a borrower here. However, I do have to argue that he would be considered a Shomer Socher though. Because the whole Vinene Mehane Be'ahu Anoyo the imisramile zabino the isba ravcha zovan behu havelayu shomer socher. Okay, so this is pretty subtle. I don't know how in the world 12-year-olds are supposed to understand this. They probably don't. They probably don't, unless like they just like drill it over into their heads like over and over and over. This is extremely subtle stuff. But okay, so basically, there's like a difference, I think, between a shoel and a shomer sacher, right? A shoel gets all the benefit, right? If I just ask you like, hey, can I borrow your ox to like plow my field? So I'm getting all the benefit, you're not getting any benefit, okay? Now a shomer sacher is like kind of mutually beneficial, right? Like, you know, I'm watching your thing and you're paying me. It's kind of like, right, so like, you know, I benefit you, you benefit me. But if I'm entirely getting, I don't know who's me or who's you, but if we have, let's say, Reuven and Shimon, right? So if Reuven borrows something from Shimon, and Reuven is getting all the benefit, so then Reuven would be a borrower. But if Reuven is watching something for Shimon, and Shimon is paying him for that, so then it's kind of mutually beneficial. So therefore, so Rav Nachman says, look, when the money changer actually uses the money, okay, so then he's basically, you know, the depositor gave him money, he's using it, and he has to then return it afterwards. I think just like if Reuven borrows Shimon's cow, he uses it and then he gives it back afterwards. But so long as he hasn't actually used it yet, so he's not a borrower because he hasn't used it yet, it's only the potential, but because the money changer is receiving something, which is the potential to be able to have money available, cash available to be able to exchange money if a transaction comes his way. So with that benefit, he is then currently guarding, right? Because he hasn't yet used the money, but he has the potential to be able to benefit from them. And for that, he's watching the money for the depositor. So that creates, in the meantime, a shomer sacher dynamic. And that's why if currently they get lost, so then he would be chayav for Aveda, but he would be potter for onsin because he's not a shoel, but he is considered a shomer sacher. So let me read that inside. Right, Tehoil vinene mahane, since he provides value to the depositor, because remember, by a borrower, the borrower receives all of the benefit, the lender receives no benefit. But here, the money changer is providing value in the meantime when he hasn't yet used the money. He's providing value as a shomer for the depositor. Be'ahu anoyo the imisramile, with that benefit, that the imisramile zabino, that if the money changer, a sort of transaction will come his way, the isba ravcha, that he could make a profit from, zovan behu, and he would be able to use this money that was deposited. So Havi Elayu Shomer Sacher, that would make him a Shomer Sacher, because kind of in exchange for this for this ability to be able to have this money on hand, he will in the meantime watch this money and take responsibility for this money. Therefore, in the meantime, he's considered a Shomer Sacher so long as he hasn't actually used the money, which would then make him a Shoel. But since so long as he hasn't used the money, he's a Shomer Sacher, and therefore he's potter for ontim, but he's chayav for gneva v'aveda. Okay. I think it was a good thing that I didn't record this stuff last night because it's so freaking subtle. Just I could probably use a little bit more coffee, but I would have been too tired last night to really get into this. Okay, where am I? I hope I got that right. I hope I understood this right. This stuff is so subtle. I don't understand how 12-year-olds are supposed to understand this. Eisvei Rav Nachman l'Rav Huna. So Rav Nachman asked the kasha on Rav Huna. All right. Hamafkid mos eitzel shulchani. All right. So if you have a gizber, the temple treasurer, okay, and the temple treasurer he's dealing with money of hektish. Hektish money, right? It belongs to the Beis Hamikdash. If you get benefit from it by accident, so then it's me'ilah. So now the gizber, the temple treasury, I guess accidentally deposited hektish funds to a money changer. So mafkid mos eitzel shulchani, if the gizber accidentally deposited hektish money with a money changer, im tzrurin, if they are bundled, lo yishtamish bayin, so the money changer should not use them, and therefore he's like a shomer sacher. Well, okay, so he should not use them. Okay, he should not use them. Okay, lefichach, therefore, im hotzi, if he did use them, he shouldn't have used them. But if he did use them, it's his fault. It's the money changer's fault. Lo ma'ala gizber. So then the gizber, the treasury is not over on me'ilah, because those funds were not supposed to be used by the money changer. Ve'imutarin, but if the money that was deposited with the money changer was not bundled, well then yishtamish bayin, well then the money changer is allowed to use them, in which case it's the irresponsibility of the treasury, and therefore the treasury is going to be over on me'ilah. Lefichach im hotzi ma'ala gizber. So then the treasurer, I guess, was mo'il. Now, okay. V'i omart afilu ne'ensu da 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 ma'ir yahotzi afilu lo tzinami do 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 do. So Rav Nachman asked the kasha to Rav Huna. What was Rav Huna's whole thing? Rav Huna's whole thing was that you have a guy, so based on our Mishnah, right? You have a guy who deposits money with a money changer. And we say that if they are not bundled, so then the money changer has the potential to use that money. And Rav Huna says that potential to use the money immediately makes him a borrower, right? That he's borrowing it. And if even an onus happens at this point, even though he hasn't actually used the money, but he has the potential to use the money, it makes him a shoel, and if anything happens, so then he's going to be chayav for onsin. So that's Rav Huna's whole premise. So if that's the case, then we should apply the same thing over here as well. Rav Nachman asked Rav Huna, we should apply the same logic to the treasury, which is, so we're saying that if the treasurer deposited money of hektish with a money changer, we said, and they were bundled, so the money changer should not have used them, okay? So then we say that, or how about this? So we say if they're not bundled, okay, if they're not bundled, so we say that when the money changer then uses the money, because he's allowed to use them, right? Money changer, if they're not bundled, he's allowed to use them. So when he then uses them, the gizber is mo'il. The thing is, if we're saying that immediately upon receipt of the deposit, he's immediately considered a shoel, a borrower, so then immediately at that point, it's like the money was at that point already released from the treasury, from hektish. It's like it was loaned to him at that point, and you can't use money of hektish for a loan. That would be me'ilah. So why is it only once the money changer changes the money, uses the money, that he would be over on, or I guess that the gizber would be over on me'ilah? He should be over on me'ilah if we're saying that once the money changer receives the money, he's immediately considered a borrower. So then he's borrowing this money now. It was immediately released from the temple treasury, from hektish, and therefore at that point he should already be over on me'ilah. There should already be an Isser Me'ilah. Why are we saying it's only Hotzi, right, SMO? Sorry, what does it say? Right? He says, "Amafkid Moses Shulchani imturin lo yishtamesh ben lefichach im hotzi lo ma'al gizbar v'mutar nishtamesh ben lefichach im hotzi ma'al gizbar." That after when the money changer changes this, uses this money, does business with this money, that's when there's me'ila. But but Rav Huna, if you're saying that in our Mishnah that the money changer is even chayiv for ones because immediately upon receipt of the money, the potential to be able to use it makes him a borrower and he's now borrowing this money, well then, ma'ir yahotzi, why does it say that the money changer, right, that there's only me'ila once the money changer has changed this money, has used this money, even if the money changer has not yet used the money, but simply received the money, but he's already considered to be borrowing the money, and therefore it should be considered like this money is already released from Ekdesh, and there should be a me'ila immediately. That's the kasha of Rav Huna. So Rav Huna would respond, Huadin afagav de lo hotzi, you're talking right. You know what? Even if he did not change the money yet, even simply upon receipt of the money, he would be over on Me'ila. There would be in Isra Me'ila, probably the Gizber would be over Me'ila. V'aydi the Tana Reisha Hotzi, Tana Seifa Nami Hotzi. And since the Reisha says Hotzi, okay, fine, because in the Reisha, Exactly. Okay, good. So in the Reisha, when it was bundled, in which case he was not considered a shoel, so then, okay, good. So since in the Reisha, the first part where the money was bundled, so then he's not considered like a shoel because he's not allowed to use it. And therefore the money changer is going to be over Me'ila when he actually spends the money. But in the Seifa, you're right. When they weren't bundled and the money changer was allowed to use them, therefore he's immediately considered a borrower, and the treasurer would immediately be over on Me'ila. But the reason why it says Hotzi is for consistency, since for symmetry, since the Reisha says Hotzi, because when they're bundled, the money changer is not allowed to use them in his Tafka. If he uses them, that he's over on Me'ila. So therefore we say the same thing in the Seifa when they are not bundled and he uses them, so then the Gizber is over on Me'ila, but technically speaking it would be from the time that the money changer receives the money, because at that point he's already considered a shoel, but we just say Otzah for symmetry, for consistency. That was extremely subtle stuff. I also think it's really important though. It's really important for understanding these distinctions. I feel like I could do a little better at understanding these distinctions. Yeah, this stuff is the stuff that we just did now is super important, I think. We're learning Hamafkid, and we're talking about Shoel and Shomer Sacher, Shomer Chinam, Socher. I feel like we haven't really gotten into the nitty gritty, which is, by the way, why I'm super psyched about Perek Hazav. I've learned 2 daf so far, Perek Hazav. It's incredible. It's so good. What's so good about Perek Hazav is that, for me at least, it feels like it gets into the practical of the practicalities of kinyanim. I was always curious, where do we learn about kinyanim? We'll talk about this when we get to Hazav tomorrow, but how do kinyanim actually work? And we talked about it in Kiddushin and stuff, and the chasm she'esh lemachayis, the chasm she'ein lemachayis, but in terms of the nitty gritty of how it actually all works, we get to that Perek Hazav. It's been amazing so far. I'm really excited for it, and I think it's going to be great. But this is to say, I feel like we've been talking about Shomer Chinam, Shomer Sacher, but I feel like we haven't really defined so good, what? Even just now, that very subtle distinction between a Shoel who gets all the benefit and a Shomer Sacher who it's kind of mutually beneficial, that's not clear anywhere. Maybe it'll become clearer later on in the Masechta. I think that isn't there a pair called Dalad Shomim or something like that? Let's see. Ezu Neshech, Socher Su'umanin, and Socher Sapialim, Shoel Sapara, Makabalas. Is there not a pair called? Is there not a pair called Dalad Shomim or something like that? I don't know. Maybe it's maybe in BavaMetzia or something? Or I don't think we learned it in Bava Kama. I don't know, I just feel like we can get better definitions for this stuff. So that was just a pretty subtle kind of distinction between a Shoel and a Shomer Sacher there. Anyways. But we're getting distracted. But also part of the reason why I'm saying this is because now we're going to talk about Shlichus Yad. Shlichus Yad is another one of these concepts that's come up recently, and we're basically going to take it to the end of the daf. That's also been hard to define a little bit. Like, what exactly is Shlichus Yad? How is it different than Gezela, right? What's Gezela? Gezela is theft. If I take something and I steal it, I'm a ganef. So what's the difference between Gezela and Shlichus Yad? What's Shlichus Yad? Shlichus Yad is that if Shimon deposits something with Ruvain and Ruvain uses it himself, so it's be'etzim, I think it's treated like Gezela, right? Therefore, it's chayiv b'onsin from that point on. So what's the difference between Gezela versus Shlichus Yad? Why is it just not theft? I think it's the, whatever, difference in intention. Was he intending to steal the whole thing or just part of it? I think that's kind of, yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we're up to now. Shlichus. There's just so many of these concepts that are like so subtle. The distinction between a shoel and a shomer sachar. There's the distinction between a gazlin and shlichus yad. Like, there's so many details here that need kind of distinguishing. All right, okay, let's go. I'm just rambling, just trying to organize all these things in my head. Okay, BavaMetzia is the best, is it not? I'm talking to myself here. Tell me in WhatsApp, do you agree that BavaMetzia is like off the charts? Alright. Oh my gosh, I gotta go weiter. Maybe I'm stalling because it's complicated stuff, this stuff. And I think my brain needs more coffee, maybe. Okay. Says the Mishnah, Sholeach yad b'pikadon, b'shamay om yiloki b'chosur v'yosur. We say om b'shas, kishas otzah, Rabbi Kiva omer kishas atviyah. Well, I'm really happy I didn't do this last night. I would not have had the... This requires a lot of effort and a lot of thinking and braining. Okay. So, Shlichus Yad, as I was just talking about. Shlichus Yad is be'etzem. Okay, so Shimon deposits. So let's talk about a barrel of wine because that's going to come up in the Gemara as an example. So let's just, for consistency, let's talk about a barrel of wine. Okay? So, a barrel of wine. Shimon deposits a barrel of wine with Reuven. So Reuven, what's he supposed to do as a custodian? Nothing. He's not supposed to do anything other than watch it. Make sure nothing happens to it. Just leave it alone. Don't touch it. But then, Reuven's Yetzer Hara gets it. And he says, come on, I just want to try it. I'm curious. What's Shimon's wine like? And his demons get to him. And in order to be Sholeach Yad, you have to make a kinyan on it. You have to make a kinyan mashit. You have to pull it. So he takes it and he moves it someplace and he's gonna, take out some wine. The shaila is, does he actually take out wine? Is it enough that he just took it with the intention, right? Right? Shlichus yad tzricha chisaron or eina tzricha chisaron, like we learned the other day. So it's a lot of details. But be'etzem, what shlichus yad, I guess we could say on maybe a basic level, is that the shomer, the custodian who is supposed to just be watching, not touching, decide is Yetzer Hara gets them. He says, I really want to try it out. I really want to use it, but he's not supposed to use it. So that is, take some of the wine or whatever it is. So that is shlichus yad. When a custodian uses the deposited thing that he's not supposed to be using, and he takes it to use for his own purposes. That's shlichus yad. Shaila is, does he actually have to, damage it at all? It could be enough that he just simply takes it with those purposes, even if he doesn't do anything. That could already be sholeach yad. The difference between, so now I think the distinction between shlichus yad and gezela is that gezela, you take the whole thing, right? So I think that if the shomer would literally just say, that's it, I'm stealing this wine, right? As we've learned about, right? Toin tan is ganav. Right? Toin Tanis Ganev is when he tells Shimon, oh, your barrel got lost, but he really took it for himself. Right? So that's theft. Right? If Shimon deposits a barrel of wine with Reuven, he just says, right, and then Shimon goes off to some place and Reuven's like, I'm taking it. That's theft. That's not shlichus yad. But I think if Shimon says, you know what, I want to try it out, you're not allowed to, if Reuven says, I want to try it out, he's not allowed to try it out. That's kind of like overstepping his, violating that trust, right? Shimon entrusted it with him, and he's violating that trust. That's shlichus yad. He says, I just want to try it out. You're not allowed to try it out. Okay, sorry if I'm babbling. I'm just trying to there's so many details here that I'm just trying to make sense of. So somebody, right? So a custodian who uses the deposited item in an unauthorized way. So shlichus yad, sholeach yad b'pikadon. B'shamei omer yilake b'chaser u'v'yaser. He's going to be chayav b'chaser v'yaser. So for now, let's assume what it means is that whether it goes down in value or whether it goes up in value. Meaning, if Ruvain, the custodian, says, you know what, I want to try out this wine, and he takes this wine and he picks it up, he picks up the barrel, okay, and he makes a kinyan on it, but then he doesn't actually, do anything. Nothing actually happens physically to the wine for a week. Whether he, whatever, I guess he drinks it, or we're going to talk about if he breaks it, or, okay, he drinks the wine. Let's say that happens a week later, okay? And a week later it increased in value. So you now have two kind of stages. You have the time that he took the wine, okay? And you also have, right, when he took the barrel, but you also have the time when he actually drank the wine. When he took the barrel, as we're going to see in an example in the Gemara, maybe it was worth 1 zuz, the barrel was worth the zuz. But when he drank the wine, it was worth 4 zuz. So, since at the time that he drank it, it was worth 4 zuz, so he pays 4 zuz. Now, what if at the time that he drank it, it went down to half a zuz? So then he still has to pay 1 zuz, like at the time that he took the barrel initially. Okay, so yiloke b'chaser u'v'yaser, right? So he's gonna have, right, b'chaser u'v'yaser. So if it goes down in value, well then he pays the one, right? If it goes down to half a zuz, he still pays 1 zuz, like at the time that he took it. U'v'yaser, that if it increases to 4 zuz, so then he will pay the 4 zuz that it was at the time that he actually drank it. Basil says at the time that it was taken out of what? The Gemara is going to explain what this means. Rabbi Akiva says at the time that it was taken to Bezdin. What does that mean? The Gemara is going to have to explain. Wow, there's so much here. Says the Gemara, Omer Rabbo, says Rabbi, Man de Gozol Chavisa de Chamra Mechavrei. This is talking about theft. He's not talking about Shlichus Yad. He's talking about theft. There are differences. Because when it comes to Shlichus Yad, there's shilas of Shlichus Yad Tzricha Chisar, and in it Tzricha Chisar, and theft is theft. If he steals the item, so that's theft. So if Ruvain steals, right? Ruvain stole a barrel of wine from Shimon. Meikar Shav Zuz, at the time that Ruvain stole it, it was a zuz. Hashta Shav Arba, and now it's worth 4 zuz. And now that it's worth 4 zuz, Tavra, he breaks the barrel, Oshasio, or he drinks it. So Mishalim Arba'a, so he needs to pay at the time that he, broke it or drank it, that he caused the damage. So he pays 4 zuz. Itbar Memela, but if it just broke on its own, okay, he came back and it's now worth 4 zuz and he finds that it's broken. He didn't himself break it, but he found that it's broken. Well then, Mishalim Zuzah, he'll pay 1 zuz, like at the time that he actually stole it. My time outcome came the Isa Hadra Limara Be'ena. Well, let's say, like in the Reisha, right, that he broke it. Okay, let's say a week later, right? So Reuven stole Shimon's barrel of wine, and a week later he broke the barrel. He himself broke the barrel. So now, if he hadn't broken the barrel, and Shimon confronted him and said, "Reuven, I know that you stole my wine. Give it back to me." So then Reuven would have to give it. He just simply gives it back. So since the barrel, the wine barrel in that sense would still belong to Shimon, in that, if Shimon confronted Reuven and it still was, in its initial condition, Reuven would just give it back to Shimon. So therefore, when Reuven at that point breaks it, it's at that point that he's considered to be stealing it, and therefore he pays, like at the time of Gezela, at the time that he's breaking it, essentially, he would pay the 4 zuz. But if he didn't, physically break it when it was at 4 zuz, it broke on its own somehow, well then we go back to the time that the last time that he did do something, which was when he took it initially. At that point it was worth 1 zuz, so therefore he pays Shimon 1 zuz, which is the value at the time that he stole it. So where am I? So my time, I'm reading a line again. My time outcome came the Isa, since so long as the wine barrel is in its initial condition, Reuven would simply give it back to Shimon. So then well then, that 1 week later, when he decides that he's going to break it or that he's going to drink it, and at that point it's worth 4 zuz, well then, kagazol minei, it's at that point that he breaks it or that he drinks it, that he's considered to be stealing it, and therefore, right, since up until that point he would simply just give it back as it is, it's only at the time that he breaks it or drinks it that he would be considered stealing it, and at that point it was 4 zuz, therefore he has to pay 4 zuz, utnan kol gazlan mishalmin kishas hagazela. And as we know, from BavaMetzia, that all thieves pay the value at the time of the theft, and it is at that time, the time that he breaks it or that he drinks it, that he's considered to be stealing it, and at that point it's 4 zuz, and therefore he pays 4 zuz. It bar memela, but if it broke on its own, well then mishalim zuza, then he pays 1 zuz. My time outcome hashtalo avid lo velo mide. Well, he didn't do anything right now. So amai kol mechayeves lei. So then, at what is he responsible for? He didn't do anything right now. He shaited the gazla. That he's responsible for the time that he stole it initially. He shaited, and at that point, zuza hu deshavya, and at that point it was worth 1 zuz. Therefore, he has to pay that 1 zuz. Okay, that was the statement of Rabbah. Okay, that was the statement of Rabbah, that Reuven steals a barrel of wine from Shimon, initially worth 1 zuz, now it's worth 4 zuz. If at this point, now that it's worth 4 zuz, he breaks it or he drinks it, so he has to pay 4 zuz. If it broke on its own, so he pays 1 zuz like at the time of the theft. Tanan. Now, we learned in our Mishnah, Beis Hillel Omrim, that Beis Hillel say, Kishas ho tzo'ah. We learned in our Mishnah that Beis Hillel says, like at the time that it was taken out. Taken out of what? Ma kishas ho tzo'ah. Taken out of what? If we're saying, if Beis Hillel is saying that you pay like at the time that it left this world, i.e. the time that he broke it, and at that point it's 4 zuz, uvimai, and in what scenario? If we're talking about not a scenario where it started out at 1 zuz and went up to 4 zuz, but fakert, it started as 1 zuz and decreased to half a zuz. And then he broke it at the time that it was half a zuz and it left this world. If you're going to say that at that point, Beis Hillel would say that you pay half a zuz, would anybody actually say, is that like actually an opinion? That if you steal a barrel worth 1 zuz and it decreases to half a zuz and then you break it, you'd be chayiv half a zuz? No way. That all thieves pay like at the time of the theft. And interestingly, even though we said a few minutes ago that it's at the time that he breaks it that it would be considered to be a theft, apparently that's only when it increased in value. That's it. Look, the time that you stole it is the time that you stole it. Now, if it increases in value and you break it then we make the argument that, look, you should pay the increased value, since technically up until that point you would still have to just give it back in its proper state, in its sort of an original state. But if it decreases in value and then you break it, we don't say, well, at the time that you broke it, it was worth half a zuz. No, we say, well, at the time that you took it, it was worth 1 zuz, so you pay 1 zuz. Okay? So, therefore, if Beis Hillel is saying that you pay kishas otzoah min ha'olam at the time that you break it, and if we're talking about where it decreased in value to half a zuz, and Beis Hillel is saying that when you break it at half a zuz, you pay half a zuz, would anybody say that? No, you say misham kishas hagazela. We would go based on the time that he took it, the time that he initially stole it, and at that point it was a zuz. V'i beyoser, okay, and if we're talking about a scenario where it increased in value, and now it is 4 zuz, okay, So Reuven stole it when it was 1 zuz. It now increased to 4 zuz, and he breaks it. And Beis Hillel is saying that you pay 4 zuz kishas otzah min ha'olam at the time that you broke it. Well, Hanu Beis Shammai. That's exactly what Beis Shammai is saying. So ele pshita kishas otzah mi beis bailim. So rather, it must be that what Rabbi Yehuda is saying at kishas otzah mi beis bailim at the time that it was taken from Shimon. Okay, so Reuven stole a barrel of wine from Shimon. It was initially worth 1 zuz. Then it became worth 4 zuz. At that point, they broke it. Beis Shammai says you would pay 4 zuz, like at the time that you broke it, at the time that Reuven broke it. But Beis Hillel argues and says, no, you pay kshas otzah, right? Kshas otzah, like at the time that it was taken from Shimon, i.e. 1 zuz. So Beis Shammai says you pay 4 zuz. Beis Hillel would say you pay 1 zuz. The sticky point for that, though, is that Lema Rabba Damar Beis Shammai. Well, then that would mean that Rabba, who says that you pay 4 zuz, is holding like Beis Shammai, because Beis Hillel would say 1 zuz. That's not good. You don't want to hold like Beis Shammai. You want to, obviously, we hold like Beis, right? Beis Shammai, what is it? Beis Shammai legabe Beis Hillel ain't a Mishnah, right? Beis Hillel is who we always paskin like. You don't want to hold like Beis Shammai. You want to hold like Beis Hillel. So Amalek Rabba. So Rabba will respond to you. Look, beYoser kuli alma lo plige. No. Rabba will say no. Beis Hillel agrees with what I'm saying, which is that if Reuven breaks it, the barrel at the time that it was worth 4 zuz, he pays 4 zuz. Beis Hillel would agree with that. All right, fine. Ki plige, the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is bechaser. Where they argue is when the price of the wine barrel decreases to half a zuz. Beis Shammai savre, Beis Shammai hold. So in our Mishnah, of course, we're talking about shlichus yad, right? In Rabba's example, we're talking about geneva, but in our Mishnah, we're talking about shlichus yad. So now, right? So Shimon deposited a barrel of wine by Reuven, and then Reuven, took it for his own use. He was going to take some wine. So kiplige b'chaser. What happens if Reuven takes the wine? Okay, Reuven takes the wine. And he's going to drink it. Okay, and then he waits a week. And during that week, the value of the wine goes down to half a zuz. And then he breaks the barrel a week later when it's at half a zuz. So Beis Shammai says, shlichus yad eina tzricha chisaron. Beis Shammai says that shlichus yad does not require any kind of damage to happen to it. And therefore, at the time that Reuven says, you know what, I'm gonna take some of this wine, and he picks up the barrel in order to take some of the wine, even though, right, and then he doesn't take it quite yet, and then he waits a week, and it goes down in value. Now remember, he says, shlichus yad eina tzricha chisaron, which means that at the time that he initially picked it up with the intention of taking some wine, so at that point, it's shlichus yad. At that point, he's chayav for own sin. It then decreases in value, and then a week later he breaks it. But at the time that he broke it, it had already been stolen. So therefore, he would be chayav a zuz. Right? And by the time it decreased in value, he had already stolen it. He was already considered a thief. And at the time that he stole it, it was a zuz. And that is what he needs to pay Shimon. Whereas Beis Hillel say that shlichus yad requires a chisaron. And therefore simply picking up the barrel with the intention of taking some wine is not in and of itself shlichus yad. Only a week later when he breaks the barrel is he creating a chisaron, is he damaging it. At that point, he is considered stealing it, and at that point, it is half a zuz, and therefore he would pay half a zuz to Shimon. Right? So, and therefore when the barrel of wine decreased in value to half a zuz, and Reuven had not yet broken the barrel, well then it became half a zuz when it was still in Shimon's possession, and therefore Reuven would pay half a zuz to Shimon according to Beis Hillel. Elohado amar Rave, but one second, but Rave says shlichus yad eina tzricha chisaron. But one second, now we're going to run into trouble because Rave says shlichus yad eina tzricha chisaron. Now who said shlichus yad eina tzricha chisaron? We just said that's the opinion of Beis Shammai. So Lema Rava Damar ki Beis Shammai. So is Rava holding like Beis Shammai? That shlichus yad eina tzricha chisaron? Ella, rather, okay, go back to the drawing board. What is, so it must be that Beis Hillel also says shlichus yad eina tzricha chisaron. So Ella achav ma'askinu, what's going on in the Mishnah? Kegon shetiltila lehavi alea gozalus. That he simply moved the barrel, he leaned it in order to stand on it to bring down some birds, I don't know, from the attic or something. Uvishol shalom midas komiflagei, and the machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is, if you borrow something without asking, is that considered borrowing or is it considered theft? Right? If I simply borrow your car without asking you, is that considered borrowing or is it considered theft? So Beis Shammai says shol shalom midas is a gazlan. If you borrow something without asking the person, that's not called borrowing, that's called stealing. And therefore, at the time that he leans, that he moves that barrel to pick up to get those birds, he's stealing it, and therefore when it subsequently decreases in value, he had already stolen it. And therefore, he pays, the one zuz, the value at the time that he moved it. Whereas, Beis Hillel says that borrowing something without asking is still considered borrowing, and you're chayiv for own sin and all that kind of stuff, but it's still considered borrowing. You haven't yet stolen it, and therefore when it decreases in value, Reuven had not yet stolen it, and therefore it decreased in value when it was still in Shimon's possession. But that which Rava says, Shol shalom midas l'rabanon gazlan have. When Rava says that according to the rabbis, according to the majority opinion that we would paskin like, Shol shalom midas is considered a gazlan, so Lema Rava Damar ki Beis Shammai, does that mean that Rava is holding like Beis Shammai? Okay. Ella, rather, Hacha b'shvach shel gezela kamifkei. So Imam is change courses entirely right now. So now the maskana of the Gemara, in explaining our Mishnah, we change courses entirely. It's no longer about a barrel of wine that was worth a zuz and went up to 4 zuz or down to half a zuz. No. We're talking about something entirely different. We're talking about where Shimon deposited with Reuven a sheep. And the sheep grew wool or got pregnant. The machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is about, the changes that happen to this sheep while Reuven is watching it. So Beis Shammai says that the shvach gezela belongs to Shimon. Right? And b'chasur v'yasur, b'chasur is, for example, if you shore the wool and now it's gone. Or b'yasur if it got pregnant. I think it's taka, was it taka fakeret actually? And it's like unclear which one exactly, chasur v'yasur, because in both cases you're like growing something and then removing it. What is Rashi? I think it may have taka been fakeret. No, where's Rashi? No? Okay. I'm in Rashi. I'm in that Rashi, basically right to the left. Okay, so chasr, is that what I said? I think that's what I said actually. Yeah, right, so chasr is like, for example, if Reuven shore the wool, or v'yoser if it had a baby. So the question is, who does that belong to? So Beis Shammai says, Yilake b'chaser v'yoser, he has to give that back to Shimon. Whereas Beis Hillel says, Kishas Otzah, no, Reuven returns the sheep to Shimon, like at the time that he gives it back, which is without the babies and without the shearings. And Beis Hillel says that it would belong to Reuven. It's like the machlokas Tanoim Titania Agozel as Harachel, that if a fellow steals a Gazazov V'yolda, if he shears it or if it has babies, Mishalim Osa Ve'eskizoseh Ve'esvodoseh Divrei Meir. So Meir would say, like Beis Shammai, that you'd have to return it with the shearings, with the babies. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Gizela Choseres Be'enei. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you just return it in its current state, which seems to be like Beis Hillel. Dekanami, Dekatani, you can also infer that this is the correct way to explain the Mishnah, because it teaches Beis Shammai Om Yiloke Bechaser Uver Yoser. It doesn't say Beyukra Vizula. It doesn't say if it increases in value or decreases in value. It doesn't say that. It says with the Bechaser V'yoser, if there's more of it, if it's less of it, right? If it grew wool, if it had a baby, if it shored the wool, if it gave birth to the baby. Okay, fine. So that's how to explain the Mishnah. It's not talking about increasing from 1 zuz to 4 zuz. Okay, wow, there's still so much more to do. 1 second, let me take a breather. Okay, so now Rabbi Kiva had said, Rabbi Kiva owned Kishas Tviyah. Okay, so Rabbi Kiva says at the time that he's taken to Bezdin. Okay, so now I think that we should understand this also based on what we had just said a minute ago, to understand that the machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is about a sheep that in terms of its shearing and its babies. So Rabbi Kiva, so now Rabbi Kiva says it's like at the time of the Tviyah, that at the time that he's brought to Bezdin. If Reuven is brought to Bezdin for having stole this sheep, so then it's at that time. It's the time that he goes to Bezdin. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Kiva says Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, the halacha is like Rabbi Kiva, umod Rabbi Kiva, but Rabbi Kiva admits b'makom sheyesh edim, that if there are witnesses to testify that he stole it, well then it would be from the time that the witnesses saw him steal it, not from the time that he's brought to court. My time Hakam to Amar Kol, because the pasuk says Lasheru lo yitnenu biyom ashmaso, that he has to give it to him like on the day that he's found guilty, and the day that he's on his day in court. And since there are witnesses, it's right. It says biyom ashmaso. At what point is he considered, to be caught? It's from the time that the witnesses testify. That is when he is, his guilt was kind of exposed. Amalei Bushaya, the Rav Yehuda says, Bushaya to Yehuda, Rebbe, Ata Omer Kain, you explain it this way, that if there are witnesses, then it's from at the time that they witnessed him steal it. But Omer, where am I? Ata Omer Kain, but Hachi Omer Reb Asi, Omer B'Yochanan, Chalu Koy Rabbi Akiva Afilu B'Makum Sheyesh Eidim. That no, Rabbi Akiva has his opinion even when there are witnesses still. It goes based on the day that Reuven is brought to court. My time how come the Amar Kra Lasher lo yitnenu biyom ashmaso uveidinahu dika michayvele ashma, because it's on the day that he's found guilty, and he's only found guilty once the court proclaims his guilt. But until then, it's not considered yom ashmaso, the day of his guilt. Sure, there's testimony that will ultimately lead to his guilt from an earlier point. There's witnesses, but the actual guilt is only going to be on the day in the actual court. When you go to Eretz Yisrael, interesting, because Reb Zera went to Eretz Yisrael, but I guess it was before then. So he requested from Reb Abba Bar Papa, if you can go out of your way to go to Sulma Detzur, Ve'ul Legabe de Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, go to Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi Uve'imine and ask him, Ishmile le Rabbi Yochanan, Halacha Krabakiva, O'en Halacha Krabakiva, ask Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi if he knows if the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva or not. Amar le, so Rabbi Bar Papa went to Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi and he was told, Hachyam Rabbi Yochanan, this is what Rabbi Yochanan says, halacha Rabbi Akiva la'olam, that the halacha is always like Rabbi Akiva. My la'olam, what does it mean that the halacha is always like Rabbi Akiva? Well, he's also teaching us about another case. So yeah, the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva here, that Reuben's chayiv based on the day that he's brought to court, but also Rav Ashi shlotomar animile eicha. Oh no, I'm sorry. What was that? 1 second. Rav Ashi says Rav Ashi shlotomar animile eicha deleka edim aval eicha deika edim lo. I gotta sneeze. So there are two ways to understand what it means that the halachas of Rabbi Akiva le'olam always. So one way to understand it is that don't say that the halachas of Rabbi Akiva when there are no Eidim, but if there are Eidim, that is based on based on when they witnessed it, not based on the day in court. No, the halacha is always like the way that Rabbi Akiva has said it, which is based on the day in court, right? So again, Amar Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi Shelo Tomar, don't say Hanimili Eicha Deleka Eidim, that the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, that it's based on the day that Reuven is brought to court, so long as there are no witnesses. Aval Eicha Deika Eidim lo, but if there are witnesses, so then it would be based on their testimony? No. The halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, just straight up based on the day in court, and that is that. V'inami, alternatively, what does it mean le'olam? It's talking about an entirely different case. They say that we pass on Rabbi Akiva. De'ahadra le'duchta ve'itbira. It's talking about a situation. Remember we saw the machlokas between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva in Bava Kama, but also the other day about ba'ina das bailim. That if you, what do you say, the ahadra leduchta ve'itbira, if you returned it to its proper place and then it broke. The question is it enough to just return it to its proper place, or do you need to also tell the owners? Rabbi Shmuel had said it's enough to return it to its proper place. Rabbi Akiva says that you need a das bailim. La'afukim Rabbi Shmuel do amar lo ba'ina das bailim, kamasman de ba'ina das bailim, v'rava amar alacha kiveis hillel. Interesting. So what Rav Yaakov Bar Idi was saying is that the halacha is always like Rabbi Akiva. Also, when it comes to the question of ba'ina das bailim, that we passing like Rabbi Akiva, that lo ba'ina das bailim. Unlike fakert. The Rabbi Shmuel had said lo ba'ina das bailim, but Rabbi Akiva says ba'ina das bailim, and that is how we paskin. Which is interesting because I think the other day we implied that we talk a paskin like Rabbi Shmuel, and then Rava says the halacha is like Beis Hillel, which is also interesting because we had just said that the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, but it says Rava and says Rashi and v'Rava Amar halacha ke Beis Hillel k'shas gezela ve'onon ki Rave avdinon ta'avale basro, and we hold like Rava. If Rava says that this is the halacha, we hold like Rava because he is later on, and he. If sort of, he says, look, this is what the halacha is, so then this is practically speaking how we are going to paskin. Okay, Chevra, third and final Mishnah of the daf. This is going to take us until the end of Perek HaMafkid. There's some really important stuff there that relates to my trying to figure out how to categorize everything. There's going to be some important stuff there as well. So here we go. It says the Mishnah, if somebody just thought to be sholeach yad, but didn't actually do anything about it, he just had a thought. Somebody who thought, so says Rashi, Omer b'fnei edim, he said before witnesses, etol pikdono shaploni la'atzmi, I'm going to take, Reuven says in front of witnesses, I'm going to take Shimon's barrel of wine, even though he didn't actually do it. He's already going to, so Beishamai Om Chayiv, Beishamai says he's already Chayiv. We say, Om Enu Chayiv Ad Sheyishlach Bo Yad. Beisil says, no, he's only going to be Chayiv if he actually takes it, if he's actually Sholeach Yad. However we define that, but he has to actually be Sholeach Yad. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Imlo shalach yadu b'mlechus re'u, right? The pasuk Dafka talks about actually doing it. Shalach yadu, he actually sent his hand. Next, hitas achavis. Okay, what if Reuven leaned the barrel? He didn't actually move it. He didn't make it a kinyan on it. He just kind of tilted it. V'notol imeno revius, and he took from it a revius of wine. He mamish did it. V'nishbra, and then it broke. Enum shalom el revius. He's not chayiv for the whole thing. He's only chayiv to pay what he took, the revius, because he didn't make a kinyan on it. And therefore, he wouldn't be considered sholeach yad. He just has to return what he took. Higbia, but if he picked it up, v'notol imenu revius, and then he took a revius from it, v'nishbra, and then it broke, Misham Mekuli has to pay all of it, because once he sholeach yad, he's chayiv ba'onsin. So once he picked it up and was sholeach yad, even though all he took was a revius of wine, if the barrel broke, he's responsible for it once he was sholeach yad, and he's going to be chayiv to pay for all of it. Okay. Says the Gemara Menani Mili, what's pshat with the machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? Beis Shammai says that just saying that you're going to be sholeach yad is enough, whereas Beis Hillel says you actually have to be sholeach yad. Menani Mili the Tanur Rabbanan, I'll call dvar pesha, that on even just words, right? What does it say? I'll call dvar pesha. I'll show al chomer al sama. I'll call aveda sheyomar kiuzeh adu elohim yovad vashnem hashashinu limishal mishal. Oh wait. Where's the but the previous pasuk said, and then immediately it says afterwards, I'll call dvar pesha. So Beis Shammai says, I'll dvar pesha, even just saying that you're going to do it. So Beis Shammai says, they're even chayiv just for the machshava, as if you did it. Beis Hillel says, you're only chayiv if you actually do it. That he actually has to be sholeach yad. Beis Shammai says Beis Hillel, then what do you do with dvar pesha, which is like dibur? Beis Hillel says okay, but what about our pasuk of where it says shlichus yad explicitly? Okay, but then still, why does it say I'll call dvar pesha? Sheyachol einli elahu. So I might think that only if Reuven himself, took it, was sholeach yad. How do I know that if he told his Eved to do it, or his shaliach, that he b'chayiv? Talmud Omar, I'll call dvar pesha. Even dibor, even if he just says, even if he instructs somebody else to do it, he's still going to be chayiv, but there actually has to be actual physical shlichus yad. Hito es achavis v'chulei. Okay, so if he leaned the chavis and he didn't actually make a kinyan on it, he didn't actually pick it up, he just leaned it and took out a revius of it, and then it broke. So we say that he's potter. So Merabah says, well, he's chayiv for the revius, but potter for the rest of it. Amar Rabba lo shanu ela nishbira. That's only if it broke. Aval echmitza. But if it all then became vinegar, that's his fault. My time at Geire Didehu Dahanula, because it's his arrows. It's right, meaning a barrel that is filled to the brim with wine is going to preserve, right? It won't oxidize, it won't become vinegar, right? Once he opens it up and takes out a revius, forget about it. Forget it, he's going to ruin the whole thing. So it's his fault. Okay, so even if he took it, so he leaned it over, he didn't actually make a kinyan on it, he takes out a revius, but taking out a revius ruins the whole thing, so he ruined all the wine. So of course he's going to be chayiv for all of it. But if he leaned it over and took some of the wine, and then later on it broke, well then he's going to be then he's going to be potter, because he wasn't sholeach yad, he didn't actually make a kinyan on it, he didn't pick it up, and therefore he's only chayiv for what he took. Okay, now we said that if he picked up the barrel and took out a revius of wine, and then later on it broke, well then he's going to be chayiv because he was sholeach yad, right? He picked it up and he took out wine. So then he was sholeach yad. So then he's chayiv b'onsin. If it breaks later on, he's chayiv for the whole barrel. Amar Shmuel lo noto mamish. So now Shmuel says, wait, when it says that he took a revius of wine, it doesn't mean that he actually took a revius of wine. Once he picks it up, once he picks it, this is important. I think that this is really important for shlichus yad. Once he picks it up with the intention of taking out a revius of wine, so he picked it up, he made a kinyan on it, even though he didn't actually take the revius of wine, but he picked it up with the intention that, hey, I'm going to take some of Shimon's wine. Shimon entrusted me to watch his barrel of wine, and his Reuven's Yitzhar gets him. He says, no, I have to taste it, and he picks it up with the intention of taking some of Shimon's wine. That's enough, right? Amar Shmuel says, Shmuel lo noto mamish. He doesn't have to actually take it. If he picks it up in order to take, even though he didn't take, he's already going to be considered sholeach yad. Okay, so let's say then that Shmuel holds shlichus yad eina tzricha chisaron, that just picking up the barrel with the intention of drinking a revius of wine from it, he's already considered to be sholeach yad. So shlichus yad eina tzricha chisaron. You don't have to damage it. You don't have to cause any damage to it in any way. And it's already considered shlichus yad. Amrei, they say lo. They say not necessarily. You could say that according to Shmuel, shlichus yad does require chisaron. Now, Rava had said earlier today that shlichus yad ain't tzricha chisaron, which is important, especially because we just said, right, that Rashi just said, v'anan ki Rava avdinu dahava le'basra, right? So if Rava says that shlichus yad ain't tzricha chisaron, so that's probably important. But anyways, we could still argue that Shmuel holds shlichus yad tzricha chisaron. Shiny hacha, but it's different over here. Denichale de tehave ha chavis kula bos is lehai revius. Holy shnikes. Holy shnikes. Holy shnikes. Okay, Chevra, I can explain it the way I understand it. I can't say more than that. But I do think that this is extremely important stuff. There's like a really important Rashi here over here. Chevra, I feel like we should read this Rashi together. I feel like this Rashi is worth $1 million. I think we should probably read it together. It's an important Rashi, I think. Okay, I think we should do it. I think it's going to be really important. The Rashi, Denichale, right? If you look to the right side, I don't know, 3-4 lines into where it gets thin. Denichale de tehave kule chavis bosses lai revius. So Shmuel says that so Shmuel wants to argue that, no, I could say, shlichus yad tzricha chisaron. Wait, let me pause the video for a sec. So really, shlichus yad tzricha chisaron. That in order to be sholeach yad, you actually do have to cause damage. So why is Shmuel saying that in this case, by the barrel of wine, that if Reuven picked it up with the intention of taking a revius of wine, that's enough? So this gets back to the distinction that I was saying before between gizela and shlichus yad, right? A custodian has this concept of shlichus yad, right? Like, if I'm not a custodian and I just take somebody's wine, that's theft. But by a custodian, there's this concept of sort of violating that trust. You were entrusted to watch it, and your Yitzhar got to you, and he said, I want to try it out. You're using it in a way that you weren't entrusted to use. That's shlichus yad. But that's not to say that a custodian can't be a thief. A custodian can also be a thief. First of all, shlichus yad is a type of theft, but he can also just be a regular old crook. And that's what Shmuel is saying over here. That, look, Shmuel is saying that shlichus yad does require chisaron. You do have to cause damage to it over here. And Shmuel is saying that when I say right now that just by picking up the barrel alone with the intention of taking a revius of wine is enough, it's because that's not within that's not within the concept of shlichus yad. That's within the context of theft, of geneva, of gezela. So now says Rashi, Denichale, Ateve kula chavis bosses lai revius, that is beneficial for the entire wine barrel to be a basis, a foundation for that one revius that he's interested in. Shetishamer osa revius v'lo tachmitz, right? As we had mentioned earlier, right, just a few minutes ago, well, what can happen is that if you take out that one revius of wine, even though you're just taking out one revius of it, but now oxygen is going to get in, it's going to ruin the whole thing. So therefore, even somebody who just wants to have one, like there's no such thing as just, having a barrel with one revius of wine in it. There's no such thing, because that revius of wine is going to go bad. You need to then have the rest of the wine to be filler for that one revius, right? There's no such thing as having a barrel with just a revius in it. It'll become vinegar. So therefore, you need to then, in order to have just one revius of wine in a barrel, you still need to fill up the entire rest of the barrel with wine, because that's the only way that you're going to have anything at all, including that revius. So therefore, when he picks up that, basically, I think the gist is that when he picks up that barrel of wine with the intention of a revius, he's intending to basically steal. You can, I guess, argue that like all he's interested in that entire barrel, like we can treat it as though that entire barrel, that revius of wine is like the equivalent of like stealing all of it, and the rest of it is just kind of like a technicality. It's really, all the rest of it is just really there in order to support that one revius of wine and preventing it from, right, the one revius of wine is like all we care about, and he's stealing that entirely, so it's theft, and all the rest of it is considered like he's just kind of borrowing it and putting it back, but he is stealing that entire revius, which you can argue is like the entire intention of that barrel is for that one revius, and the rest of it is really just to prevent that one revius from becoming vinegar. Therefore, he's stealing all of it, and therefore it's actually theft. It's not shlichus yad. I think that's all I'm understanding. But let's read it inside, because Rashi, I think he gives some important definitions. So, shetishamer osa revius, that the rest of the barrel should be there just to prevent that one revius from becoming vinegar. V'lo tachbetz, and won't become vinegar. Ule'olam shlichus yad b'davar acher. But really, I can argue for Shmuel that in general, shlichus yad in any other context, tzricha chisaron. It would only be shlichus yad if you do cause damage. V'anota pikadon umagbio amenas l'shloach bo yad. And if somebody picks up a deposit, if Reuven were to pick up that a deposit, anything else, I don't know, a barrel of wheat, right, a container of wheat, and he would pick it up al manas l'shloach bo yad, with the intention of being shaleach yad, that he wanted to try out the wheat. Kozman shelo chasro, if he didn't actually damage it, eino mischayev bag ba'aso, picking it up alone would not be enough. Hol v'lo notlo al menas ligzol es kulo, since he did not pick it up with the intent of stealing all of it. Again, this gets back to his distinction, at least in my mind. Maybe I could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure that I'm right, but this is how I'm understanding it. Is that he didn't pick it up with the intention of stealing all of it. If he did pick up, let's say, wheat, right, with the intention of taking it and stealing it, and that when Shimon comes for it, he says, "Oh yeah, I don't know what happened to it. It got stolen or whatever." But he himself took it. Well, then that's just theft. It's not shlichus yad. That's just theft. Right? So again, since he didn't, so if he were to pick up that container of wheat, but just with the intention of like trying out some of it, taking some of it, so he just wanted to use it in a way that he was not allowed to use it. So Shmuel would argue that there's no such concept of shlichus yad without actually causing damage. But wine, which there's no such thing as having just a revius of wine in a barrel. You need to fill up the whole barrel of wine just in order to have one revius. So notal v'inicho imashar, it's like as if he took all of the wine, right? It's as if like all that we care about is that one revius. It's as if he stole it and put it back with the rest of it, l'ishtamer, in order to be preserved, v'naisa shoel al kol shar chavis, and he's considered like a borrower with regard to all of the rest of the barrel. But all that he cared about is that one revius, and he stole it entirely. So therefore it would be considered like theft and not like shlichus yad. I think. Wow. Okay. So again, so says the Gemara, it's different over here. That really, what he's interested in is I guess the main thing over here with this wine is this one revius, but you need all the rest of the wine just in order to support and to preserve that one revius. But it is considered like theft because he stole that entire, he picked up the wine with the intention of stealing that one revius entirely. By Ravashi asks, so what if Reuven was entrusted with a purse, and the purse was filled with coins, but he just wanted to take one of those coins? So what's the halacha? So then we say, look, when it comes to the wine, so we said that you need all the rest of the wine just to preserve that one revius of wine. But in terms of, this purse, you could take out one coin and it'll be just fine, right? So therefore, maybe it should not be considered like theft. It should just be considered like shlichus yad. If you didn't actually take it, you should be potter. Or dilma, or perhaps shining the tirus of the arnikim and the tirus of the dinar teku, or perhaps a purse full of coins will be safer than just one coin, and therefore even just sort of picking up the purse with the intention of stealing that one coin, you kind of do need all the rest of the coins. So it could be like similar to just like stealing that one coin entirely, and you would be chayev, kind of like the wine. Wow, today was some flippin' duff. Oh my gosh. Wow, it's exhausting. We started so long ago. What did we even start with? What were we even doing? We were talking about important stuff. The money changer. Giving it to the money changer and Shoel and Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sacher. Oh my gosh. Then we moved on to like oh my gosh, when you have that deposit and it goes up in value and down in value, and then distinctions between shlichus yad and gezela, and oh my goodness gracious, Cheved. With this we finished Perek HaMafkid. We just learned for the past like 3.5 weeks some of like the most classic Gemaras that there are. Elu Metzias HaMafkid. We've learned them. That's great. Cheved, this is really good. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Tomorrow we're going to start with Perek HaZov, which is also, it's going to be incredible. There's so much great stuff. It might be hard, but it's going to be really, really awesome. Peace.